Good morning. President Thomas, members of the Board of Trustees, alumni, faculty, staff, students, and other guests. We are pleased to welcome you to the 151st Annual Founders Day Convocation. We are still basking in the sunlight that lingers from last year's commemoration of our 150th anniversary. More energized than ever to continue for centuries more our mission as an institution of academic excellence, where we develop men with disciplined minds to lead lives of leadership and service. As I call Dr. Lawrence Carter, Sr., Dean of the Martin Luther King Jr. International Chapel, to introduce the traditional Founders Day call to order and evocation, I would like to remind you all to silence all electronic devices at this time. Please. The Founders Day proceedings will follow as printed in your program. And I ask that all those taking part today to take your place at the appropriate moment so that we can move quickly and efficiently with our program today. Dean Carter.
I call forth now the 23rd pastor of historic Silver Bluff Springfield Baptist Church of Augusta, where Morehouse College was founded, to light our candle of the mystique, the Reverend Hardy Spurgeon Bennings III. We pause just for a moment to recognize members of the faculty, staff, and trustees who transitioned since the last Founders Convocation. In case you are not aware of our tradition, I should inform you that all students who transition are recognized at baccalaureate and at the John Hope graveside service. William Taggart, June 8th. Charles Edward Merrill, November 29th. Cason Hill, April 8th. Rudy Horn, December 12th. Cheryl Allen, January 29th. Willie J. Borda, Jr., December 20th. Lerone Bennett, yesterday. Addie Stabler Mitchell, April 22nd. Alton Hornsby Jr., September 1st. A moment of silence. Amen. I'll now invite you, all who are able, to please rise for the evocation. you will remain standing for the presentation of colors and the morning hymn. Won't you bow your heads to your hearts? Gracious and omni-eternal Spirit, the founder and author of our faith, the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen, thou who art life more abundant and our liberator in times of trouble and triumph, in humble dependence on your grace-filled breath, dear God, we rejoice. And we celebrate this week Black History, Valentine's Day, Ash Wednesday, the beginning of Lent, and Founders Day. We stand at the heart of February in the authenticity of agape love, where Morehouse was founded on February 14th, 151 years ago in Augusta, destined for Atlanta. We know, dear God, in all of this, you are speaking to us from the precincts of eternity and the apex of the ontological ladder. We have seen the unfathomable mystery that births a phoenix from ashes in the rise of Atlanta. Give us this day the immeasurable assurance that dear old Morehouse has nowhere to go but to the stars. We give thee special thanks, dear God, for the global transformation now taking place. Yes, it is messy, but we ask you to help us see beyond appearances. And for this reason, we welcome the 12th successor to the mantle of our founder, Dr. David A. Thomas. And we celebrate Dr. Thomas as the first president of Morehouse to be a direct descendant of the founder, as he is prepared to lead our never-ending social gospel justice transformation. On this planet, the nature of our spiritual journey is constant evolution, constant growth, and becoming more like our true selves. Let us not forget that on Valentine's Day, amid an era less opportune for newly freed slaves, less commodious and less resourced, the founder of Morehouse, the founder of the Morehouse social ethics and religious tradition, remained faith-filled, full of belief in a new day, filled with the vision of peace, love, nonviolence, and prosperity for all. On Valentine's Day, W.J. White looked through the eyes of love and witnessed it everywhere, because love was who he was. Infinite One, teach us that love is who we are, that in the heart of our humanity is the grace of God. Remind us that you are love, dear Spirit. Love twitters the birds and holds galaxies in equilibrium. Love is the power that wins by drawing all players into one team. Love goes before, shines from behind, lifts from above, and beckons from the same place. Love makes everything so simple. It's the only choice there is to sustain life. Love rejoices in all seasons, warms the frozen soul of winter, fuses the budding blossoms of spring, cools the hot winds of summer, and reaps the harvest of autumn. love is a unifying force. How could we escape love, dear Master? We breathe its loving ethers as God is around and within us. Give us to know that in our individual spiritual growth and evolution, our shadow aspects always come forward to be healed and dissolved in the light. And this is why we light the candle of the Morehouse mystique, reminding us that our rising suns bring everything that is hidden to the light of the nature of God. Let everyone say, amen.
Please remain standing for the presentation of colors. And we will sing the National Anthem and one stanza of Lift Every Voice and Sing. Please make sure you silence all electronic devices.
Colors. Turn. March.
Please be seated. Founders Day is one of the most significant events of the academic year, when we commemorate the vision of our founders to establish an institution of higher education for Black men to move beyond bondage into freedom, from chattel property to citizen, and from servitude to service, and from receivership to leadership. That is what a Morehouse education has done for us and for the world. Founders Day is a time of celebration and rejoicing, our own high holy time with the college's family and friends, where we are an open house to the members of the Atlanta community and beyond to join in our festivities. While we yet revel, we remember the college's past struggles, the strivings and successes to bring us to this completion of a milestone of last year's 150 years, where we are poised to endure for centuries more. As we reflect upon this special occasion of the 151st year of the founding of the institution that we now know as Morehouse College, we understand that the purposes for which we were founded are enduring, and our mission to train men for lives of leadership and service is evergreen and everlasting. Therefore, in this 151st year, we affirm that we cannot rest on the laurels of the past 150 years. We must turn the proverbial page and script a new chapter in the rich story that is Morehouse College. We are just as eager for Morehouse's future chapter as we see before us such bright and talented men who model the leaders of Morehouse's past, but with a response that imprints their mark on the future of the world. These young students of today and tomorrow summon us to the now, to the immediacy of a future horizon coming forth into view. I think Shakespeare had a very good way of putting that. He said, "These are the tides in the affairs of men, which taken at the flood leads on to fortune. Omitted, all the voyage of their life is bound in shallows and in miseries. On such a full sea are we now afloat, and we must take the current when it serves, or lose our ventures." We were founded during a flood of misery. Our brilliant founders and leaders kept Morehouse afloat for these 151 years. For the next century and beyond, we will sail on at full sea, on to fortune for the young men that we serve. This then is the occasion and the mandate of our 151st Founders Day. Thank you. It is now my honor to recognize members of the platform and the many special guests with us here today. And let me apologize in advance for any omissions or mispronunciations. I would like for all the members present of the Board of Trustees to please stand and be recognized. All members of the Board of Trustees, including student trustees and faculty trustees, please stand and be recognized. I would like for all the members of the executive leadership team of Morehouse to stand and be recognized. Thank you. Would all Morehouse faculty and staff please stand and be recognized? Now, would all Morehouse alumni please stand and be recognized. Our First Lady of the college, Willetta Lewis, will you please stand and be recognized? Immediate past President, Dr. Robert Michael Franklin, and First Lady, Dr. Cheryl Franklin, will you please stand and be recognized? Dr. Edward Wheeler, President of ITC, are you in the audience? Dr. Ronald Johnson, President of Clark Atlanta University, are you present yet? Loretta Parham, AUC Woodruff Library. Dr. Stanley Pritchett, President of Morris Brown College. Would you please stand? Are you present? Are there any other current or former college presidents present? Would you please stand and be recognized? Is Mrs. Yvonne Gloucester, wife of the late Hugh Gloucester, present? Would you please stand? Is Dr. June Gary Hops, wife of the late Provost Dr. John Hops, Jr., are you present? Would you please stand? Okay. And I see that the wife of the current Provost, Melody Hodge, is in the audience. Would you please stand and be recognized? In this, our 151st celebration year, we are pleased to have some very special guests with us who represent the Morehouse family. Miss Maroon and White and her court, please stand and be recognized. Men of the freshman class of 2021, please stand and be recognized. Am I overlooking anybody? Am I overlooking anybody? And last but certainly not least, with all those preparing to cross the stage in May, the men of the senior class of 2018. I now invite Mr. Avery Munnings, class of 1986 and a member of the Board of Trustees, to bring greetings from the Board of Trustees on behalf of our board chairman, Willie Woods. Mr. Munnings.
Thank you, Provost Hodge, and members of the Morehouse community. It is always a pleasure to take this stage on any opportunity I get. On this day, I am particularly delighted to be here for this occasion. On behalf of the Morehouse College Board of Trustees, I bring you greetings on behalf of our board chairman, Willie Woods, who could not be with us this morning, but he will join us later this week. We also want to thank former acting president Harold Martin for his leadership and tireless service to Morehouse College. Today, however, it is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce the 12th president of Morehouse College, Dr. David A. Thomas. On January 1st, 2018, Morehouse ushered in a new era of leadership for the college. President Thomas has more than 30 years in higher education. He has served as a professor and an administrator. He holds a PhD in organizational behavior studies and a Master of Philosophy in organizational behavior degree, both from Yale University. He also has a Master of Organizational Psychology degree from Columbia University and a Bachelor of Administrative Sciences degree from Yale College. President Thomas is the former H. Naylor Fitzhugh Professor of Business Administration at Harvard Business School and the former Dean of Georgetown University's McDonough School of Business. As Dean of Georgetown's McDonough School from 2011 to 2016, President Thomas led 250 employees and more than 2,000 students through a period of growth, which included the redesign of the MBA curriculum, the launch of the school's first online degree program, and most notably, a $130 million capital campaign. He's going to do better than that here at Morehouse. He enhanced academic and professional opportunities for the school's undergraduate and graduate students, including adding the Global Business Experience and an Office of Professional Development for undergraduates. He also increased the diversity of the faculty and staff, launched new research initiatives, and boosted the school's research funding. In addition to his work as an educator, President Thomas serves as a member of the Board of Directors of DTE Energy, the American Red Cross, and the Posse Foundation. He is nationally renowned for his research in managing diversity in the workplace. He is the co-author of 2 landmark books, Breaking Through: The Making of Minority Executives in Corporate America, which is one of the first in-depth studies to focus on minorities who have made it to the top, and his second book, Leading for Equity: The Pursuit of Excellence in Montgomery County. We are honored he now leads Morehouse College at this time in our history as we position this prestigious institution for even greater success for the next 150 years. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand to welcome, for his first Founders Day celebration, the 12th President of Morehouse College, Dr. David A. Thomas.
Thank you, Trustee Munnings, for your introduction. I noticed during it that of all the things that I've accomplished, the one that got applause was how much money I had raised. In these last few weeks, I've loved being greeted by students and faculty as, "Hey, Mr. President, how are you doing?" I hope it does not become, "Hey, Mr. President, show me the money." So let me return to my notes that I made before I knew that you would clap about the money. I want to start again by thanking Trustee Munnings for his introduction. I also want to thank the students, faculty, and staff of Morehouse College. Your welcome to me in my 5 weeks on this campus as your president has been warm and loving. And you have also met me with the urgency of now, your sense and my sense that now is the time to aim our sights on making a greater Morehouse for the 21st century. Provost Hodge stole some of my thunder when he introduced the First Lady of Morehouse. I let her read my comments this morning at about 5:30 because I couldn't sleep. She saw that I was going to recognize her and was very happy about that. So I want to ask her to stand again. Miss Willetta Lewis, please give her applause. She's been with me on a 45-year journey. That took us from our humble working class beginnings in Kansas City, Missouri, to this moment. I've been told by some alumni that when I talk about the fact that Morehouse was the college I always wanted to go to, but I couldn't afford to come, they thought it was great marketing, but they were not sure it was true. But you can ask her if it's true. She was there when I applied to college all those years ago. I give a special thanks to those who worked so hard to organize this 151st Founders Day Convocation and to ensure that a president of 5 weeks would not tank 151 years of success. They provided me a wonderful and thoughtful speech to read. It's sitting on my chair. I was cautioned to be swift because some students must be in class at 1 p.m. All I have to say is, if you wind up being late, just say, the president made me late. And now to the horror of those who work so diligently to bulletproof and idiot-proof my comments. They will discover something about me that they will probably discover over and over again, which is that I am a president who goes off script. But I will not go long. I want to start by saying how humbled and blessed I feel to stand here as the 12th president of Morehouse College, and to recognize the specialness that Robert Franklin, former president of Morehouse College, sits next to me, because it represents the continuity of the leadership of this school and the vision for its greatness. As I said, this is the college I wanted to attend, but I could not afford to attend. There's a lesson for you men of Morehouse in my story, and it is that persistence pays. Don't give up on your dreams. All things are possible, but some things take time. It took me almost 50 years to be here at Morehouse, but I am here. And I'm drawn to be here because of the mission of Morehouse College, to develop men with disciplined minds to lead lives of leadership and service, and to be a college that is a steward of Black community, history, and culture. We are the only place on the planet, I believe, where Black and brown men and men of other hues who are drawn to our mission can come and just be. Just be in the prime of their formative years of adulthood. And if you've ever been any place where you can just be, you know that that is the place where you can discover who you really are and who you can really be, and where you can set ambitions that others cannot imagine, but you can believe they are possible because you can just be. And become one who makes a positive difference in the world. I'm also drawn to be here at Morehouse College because of the big, hairy, audacious project that is Morehouse College. The project that is so obvious that it is almost a secret. Seniors, please stand. Of all those students in this room, I will have the shortest amount of time with you. So I'm going to share with you the secret. You may already know it, but I know for many it is so obvious that they don't see it. So what I want you to do is lean forward as if a friend of yours is about to tell you something that is precious and important, and maybe others will not understand, but it is important for you to understand because you have lived it. So lean in with me. You are the tip of the spear of an idea that was born 151 years ago. That idea is that black and brown men can thrive and lead in a society designed at its inception to exploit, exclude, and degrade you. You are the tip of the spear of an idea that black and brown men and those of other hues can be a brotherhood with shared values of social justice, inclusion, spirituality, human dignity, excellence, and equality, and that brotherhood can create a better world. Our most illustrious alum of the 20th century, Martin Luther King, taught us that that idea is critical to the fulfillment of the American idea. Both the Morehouse idea and the American idea have yet to be perfected, but they are worth our pursuit every day that we wake up, and they are inextricably linked. Think now, men of Morehouse, on the mission of Morehouse College and the larger project, the idea that I have described, the idea that we seek to perfect. I want you to imagine that there is a spear aimed at a target. That target is to change the world, to create a world consistent with the values that this institution has stood on for 151 years. Gentlemen, seniors, about to go into the world, you are the tip of the spear. And if iron sharpens iron, as it has these past 151 years, that tip, and this is the challenge to those who will come after you, who will graduate after you. If iron sharpens iron, that tip will only get sharper in the decades and century to follow. So I'll ask you to please be seated. I want to end by making a promise to you and all those in this room that I so believe in your potential as demonstrated by the men who have come before you and those in the classes that follow you, that I will do everything in my power to gain the resources, assemble the faculty and staff, and create the culture that ensures that the Morehouse of the 21st century will be as powerful a force for transformation as the Morehouse of the 20th century. With that, I thank you for the greeting that you have given me and my wife in these 5 weeks. And I hope you guys like having me as your president. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased today to perform a time-honored duty that has traditionally been the privilege of our treasured trustee emeritus, Dr. Otis Moss, Jr., who served at the helm of the board for many years. Dr. Moss could not be here today, so I will present the winners of the 2018 Otis Moss Jr. Oratorical Contest in his stead. Oratory and debate have been a favorite activity of Morehouse College since the school's early days in Augusta, Georgia. In an effort to maintain that tradition, Dr. Moss, a much revered minister and nationally acclaimed orator, formally instituted this contest in 1999. No other name is more fitting to be linked with the ongoing oratorical tradition at Morehouse College than that of Dr. Moss. Two faculty members, Dr. Leah Criquet, Associate Professor of English, and Dr. Allison Ligon, Associate Professor of English, have provided leadership and coordination of this contest. We are also pleased to have a young alumnus and last year's winner of the Otis Moss Jr. Oratorical Contest, Mr. Caleb Henderson of the class of 2017, who officiated as timekeeper in this year's competition, to also join us today. I invite them to the stage to assist me, President Thomas, and Provost Hodge in presenting the awards.
First honorable mention goes to Mr. Carlton Bates. The second honorable mention, Mr. Justin Brooks. Fourth place, Mr. David Early III. Third place, Mr. Isaiah Izemba. Second place, Mr. Quentin Paschal. Quentin could not be here with us today. He has a job interview in New York. And the 2018 Otis Moss Jr. Oratorical Contest winner is Mr. Malachi Walden.
Our observance of Founders Day would not be the same without the glorious sounds of our world-renowned Glee Club. Please enjoy.
Jesus
I must recognize Dr. David Morrow, professor and director of the Morehouse College Glee Club, and thank the Morehouse College Glee Club singers. If you follow me on Twitter, which I'm sure all of you do, I often tweet about excellence at Morehouse College. That is excellence. So at this time, it is my distinct honor to introduce our 151st Founders Day speaker, Dr. Gary Dorian, an Episcopal priest, the Reinhold Niebuhr Professor of Social Ethics at Union Theological Seminary, a religion professor at Columbia University, and an author of more than 275 articles and 18 books. Dr. Dorrien is an internationally renowned theologian and prolific writer. His writings on race, religion, and social justice underscore the connections between the Black church, social Christianity, the creation of Black institutions, and the struggle for freedom. Philosopher Cornel West describes Dr. Dorrien as the preeminent social ethicist in North America today. Dr. Dorrien's groundbreaking 2015 book, The New Abolition, W.E.B. Du Bois and the Black Social Gospel, won the prestigious Grawemeyer Award in Religion, an award that honors highly significant contributions to religious and spiritual understanding. In the book, Dr. Dorrien offers a new perspective on modern Christianity and discusses the tradition of social justice theology and activism that fueled the civil rights movement. Dr. Dorian's latest book, Breaking White Supremacy, Martin Luther King Jr. and the Black Social Gospel, was published last month. It has been hailed as a powerful piece of inspiration for religious activists today that provides insight into the stories of African American Christian leaders struggling for racial justice, whose work still has relevance in this age of divisive politics and racial strife. The book includes 4 Morehouse icons, all Baptist preachers and founders of the Morehouse social gospel justice tradition: Mordecai Johnson, Benjamin Elijah Mays, Howard Thurman, and Martin Luther King Jr. We are fortunate that an alumnus, Reverend Dr. Delmon Coates, donated copies of the book for our special guest in honor of William Jefferson White. It is now my pleasure and honor to welcome Dr. Gary Dorian.
Thank you, President Thomas. To President Thomas, President Franklin, Provost Hodge, Dean Carter, trustees and alums, esteemed faculty and staff, the senior class of 2018, students and guests, it is a great honor and privilege for me to speak to you at this Founders Day Convocation. Dean Carter is a treasured friend and exemplar to me, and I hold the utmost regard for this great institution and the figures that have led it. I am a last-minute substitute, but I didn't even consult my calendar when I said yes. I don't care what that calendar says. I'm going back to Morehouse. Many leaders of the Black social gospel tradition came out of this college, or taught here, or are on the board here, or all these things. William Jefferson White, John Hope, J. Pius Barber, William H. Borders, Mordecai Johnson, George Kelsey, Benjamin Mays, Howard Thurman, Martin Luther King Jr., many others. No institution comes close to this in providing the social justice theology of the Black freedom movement. Black church leaders of the 1880s confronted new challenges in a new era of American history. In their time, Reconstruction was abandoned, racial caste was codified, and racial terrorism backstopped the caste system. The founders of the black social gospel were forced to ask what a new abolition would be in this context. They taught that the church has to support political struggles for social justice, must deal constructively with modern intellectual criticism, and must combat the tyranny of white supremacism, a structure of power based on privilege. The founders included White, Hope, William Simmons, Alexander Walters, Ida Wells Barnett, Adam Clayton Powell Sr., Nanny Burroughs, and Richard Wright Jr. All of them were active in the ecumenical movement, prodding it to risk something for racial justice. They were succeeded by a generation of leaders who came out of Morehouse, espousing social gospel theology from the beginning of their careers. Mays, Kelsey, Barber, Johnson, Thurman. These 5 figures were the chief mentors of Martin Luther King, who was steeped in the social gospel that Mays and Kelsey personified at Morehouse, that Barber taught him during his student days at Crozier Seminary, and that Johnson and Thurman epitomized at Howard University. The legacy of this generation of social gospel leaders is immense, paving the way for the King generation of James Lawson, Joseph Lowry, Andrew Young, Pauli Murray, Bernard Lafayette, James Bevel, Diane Nash, and other leaders of the 50s and 60s. We recount this legacy on Founders Day because doing so is an elementary expression of gratitude and remembering. But this extraordinary tradition is far more than just a tradition, for it inspires the best of our justice movements today, providing a model of defiance, hope, and spiritual fire. Consider the trio of Johnson, Mays, and Thurman. Johnson was a legendary speaker on the social gospel lecture circuit. He gave stem winders every week, blending liberal theology, democratic socialism, anti-colonial internationalism, civil rights progressivism, anti-communism, and Gandhian revolutionary nonviolence. He was the first black president of Howard University. He brought Mays and Thurman to Howard, and one of his trademark lectures on Gandhi made a riveting impression on young Martin Luther King Jr. Johnson and Mays had the same gut-level passion for social justice activism. A speech was a wasted opportunity if you didn't talk about the struggle for justice. Johnson and Mays also had the same theology, preaching about the kingdom of God, the social ethical teaching of Jesus, the sin of individuals and society, the way of the cross, and the providential grace of God. Thurman was too mystical to share the opinion of Johnson and Mays that he should be an activist leader like them, but Thurman was a beacon of light in his time, which is why so many people wanted him to be the American Gandhi. Today, he radiates more brilliantly than ever as an apostle of the spiritual unity of all things. The story of Martin Luther King Jr. and the movement he led is, I believe, our greatest national treasure. It is beautiful, searing, inspiring, harrowing, and traumatic. It abounds with noble visions, resounds with magnificent rhetoric, contains a few victories, ends in nightmarish despair, and does not end. It surpasses all other American stories, yet no longer makes its own way, partly because it is burdened by the way it was told for many years. To me, this story is the passion narrative of our time. It crashed through my lower-class white world and put me on a very unlikely path. I grew up in a poor, semi-rural, nominally Catholic family in mid-Michigan, Bay County. My parents moved there after growing up in similarly poor areas of the Upper Peninsula in Michigan, where my father took abuse for his Cree heritage. At the age of 20, he acquired passably white status by moving to mid-Michigan. I got to Mass just enough to be caught by the figure of the crucified Jesus. This God figure who responded to evil with self-sacrificing love provided a religious ideal, a sign of transcendence that broke through my everyday horizon of lower-class culture and the next game. Then, the stunning witness of the civil rights movement similarly broke through, melding in my thought and feeling with the cross of Christ. I came of age in the climactic years of the civil rights movement. The Selma demonstration made a searing impression. My teachers described America as the world's greatest nation in every way that mattered, and the greatest ever. But the civil rights movement taught a very different lesson. King became the formative figure for me long before I understood much of anything about politics or religion. Then he was assassinated, and he became not merely the leader of a justice movement, even a martyred leader. He was a Jesus figure who died for us, the exemplar of the peacemaking and justice-making way of Jesus. That was the extent of my religious worldview when I squeaked into college, mostly to play sports. All these years later, it is still my bedrock. After King was gone, he left an incomparable legacy and an immense void. For 15 years, King Day celebrations called for a King holiday. I organized many of them. King's reputation among white Americans climbed ever higher, putting a holiday in reach. People who had spurned or reviled him while he lived now claimed to admire him. Many forgot having reviled him. The campaign for a holiday lost a House of Representatives vote in 1979 and won a veto-proof majority in Congress in 1983, compelling President Reagan to sign it. The campaign fixed on "I have a dream" imagery. To win the iconic status that King deserved, he had to be domesticated, and was. The memory of King taking the struggle to Chicago, railing against capitalism and the Vietnam War, emphasizing what was true in the Black Power movement, and organizing a poor people's campaign faded into an unthreatening idealism. King became safe and ethereal, registering as a noble moralist. The civil rights movement was reduced to a reform movement for individual opportunity, safe, admirable, quintessentially American. It became very hard to remember why, or even that. Martin Luther King was the most hated person in this country in his lifetime. King went from Morehouse to Crozier Seminary to Boston University. At Boston, he wrote a doctoral dissertation on the sacred personality of God and every human being. God is the personal ground of the infinite value of human personality. If the worth of personality is the ultimate value in life, America's racial caste system was abhorrently evil, and on Christian grounds, distinctly evil. Evil is precisely that which degrades personality, the sacred dignity of every life. 25 years after King was gone, a scholarly confession contended that he never really cared about his graduate school theology, and he dumped it after he became a movement leader. I appreciate that some scholars believe that this tack enhances King's relevance and street credibility, but I believe it gets crucial things very wrong. It flatly contradicts what King said about himself. It ignores that he employed distinctly personalist arguments throughout his career to all manner of audiences. And it overlooks that he preached from the same barrel of sermons throughout his career. The entire barrel existed by the end of his first year of ministry. Then the movement swept him away. The movement made King, not the other way around. But lightning would not have struck in Montgomery, Alabama without King. His distinct brilliance lit up the Montgomery boycott on its first night and sustained it against enraged opposition. Montgomery happened because Montgomery had Joanne Robinson, the Women's Political Council, Rosa Parks, and Edie Nixon. They were ready to challenge bus segregation when the perfect test case came along. Somebody had to speak for the boycott. Nixon excoriated the ministers when nobody volunteered. King walked in late, and he took offense at being excoriated. History turned in a moment because the newcomer was willing to risk his life. King had 40 minutes to plan what he would say that night. He had one guiding thought as he headed to Holt Street Church. I have to be militant and moderate at the same time. And so he was, magnificently. King appealed to the democratic traditions of America and the deep integrity of oppressed black Americans and the teaching of Jesus. He made 2 justice runs, declaring that there comes a time when people get tired of being trampled by the iron feet of oppression. If this movement was wrong, so were the Supreme Court, the Constitution, Jesus, and God Almighty. If they were wrong, justice is a lie, and love has no meaning. They were reaching for the daybreak of freedom and justice. Christian love is one side of the Christian faith, and the other side is justice. Christians live in the spirit of love divine and employ the tools of divine justice. They use the tools of persuasion and the tools of coercion. King ran out of metaphors for his third run, but the Holt Street Address perfectly distilled what became his message. Soon, it was his trademark, helping him to personally link the fledgling theatrical church-based movement for racial justice in the South to the established institutional, largely secular movement in the North. The movement needed a church-based organization dedicated to spreading protest wildfire, so King founded the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and stocked it with powerhouse preachers. For a while, they floundered, even as King became famous. King was sensitive, kindly, peaceable. It repulsed him to imagine that he would get people injured or killed. It took the student sit-in explosion of 1960 and the founding of SNCC to push King into actual Gandhian disruption. King realized that he needed to raise hell in the most hostile cities he could find, so he selected lieutenants who were willing to do it. SCLC became a fire alarm outfit relying on street theater and heroic agitation. It was long on ministers who did not treat their female allies with the respect they deserved, and King was no exception. Ella Baker thus ended up advising SNCC. But both organizations stoked protest wildfire in ways that King's leadership inspired. Martin Luther King got more radical and angry every year from 1960 to the end. Birmingham nearly ended disastrously. President Kennedy proposed the Civil Rights Act. St. Augustine was a bloodbath that did end badly, except the Civil Rights Act came out of it. Selma nearly ended disastrously, but the march to Montgomery led to the Voting Rights Act. Then King took the struggle north, where very few of his lieutenants wanted to go. Segregated housing led to segregated schools, and segregated housing and schools hurt black Americans in the job market. So King pushed into Chicago, where SCLC was battered viciously. This time, the battering was not redeemed or nationalized by anything political, just as Watts and Detroit exploded. King agonized at barely making a dent in white supremacy. Until 1966, he refused to say that white Americans never intended to integrate their schools and neighborhoods. Then he got pelted with rocks in Chicago, and he said it scathingly, cautioning SCLC, quote, "The white man literally sought to annihilate the Indian. If you look through the history of the world, this very seldom happened." King said, "This exactly is what black Americans are up against." Today we are caught in another racial backlash loop. President Obama had a good presidency. He represented this nation with consummate dignity and intelligence. He finished with an outstanding approval rating of 56%, and he helped to sow a ferocious, vindictive white lash merely by living in the White House and doing his job. Every day that he served, President Obama made this nation look better than it was. Something the current President of the United States very keenly grasped. Mr. Trump caught the resentment against the Rainbow Coalition that carried Obama to the White House. He realized the backlash was sufficiently huge and seething to win the White House for somebody. It produced a best-selling conspiracy literature and impassioned rallies demanding, "I want my country back." Obama hadn't done anything yet, and they'd already lost their country. The birther movement rang this alarm for 2 years before Trump joined it in 2011. He became a major political player by stumping for something that was too blatantly racist to be called a dog whistle. He flirted with the idea of running for president, shooting to the top of the Republican field, but wasn't quite ready to mount a campaign. He was impressed at how quickly he ascended and how easy it was. All he had to do was play to the rage and not get outflanked in doing so. The Trump presidency is a product of that period when he realized how he would run if he ran. When he ran, the culture war would be number one. Trump aimed at the millions of Americans who loathed Obama and were eager to believe ludicrous things about him. I wrote a book on Obama during that period, so I was compelled to actually read the anti-Obama literature. It would be impossible to exaggerate how ludicrous it was. Newt Gingrich, running for president, sprinkled his speeches with conspiracy rot. Trump went to school on the Gingrich campaign, imagining a better and meaner version of it. And so here we are, dealing with a white lash presidency that assiduously demonizes Latino immigrants, Muslim immigrants, and immigrants from parts of the world that the president smears with lower than ever obscenity. And so today, we need the witness of Martin Luther King Jr. more than ever. Love and justice, moderate and militant, tools of persuasion and coercion, ethical idealism and power politics. Till 1967, King refused to describe America's racial reaction as a backlash because that kind of language always blamed him for something. Calling it a backlash suggested that racism was increasing and he should do something different. Backlash talk was a species of denial. Then King wrote his last book, Where Do We Go From Here? And he stopped imploring against calling it a backlash. It was terribly real, he allowed, so it had to be named. But what mattered was the cause, not the backlash loop. Racial hostility was always there, and had never been otherwise. The civil rights movement merely brought this hostility to the surface. Coping with that reality was, and is, a spiritual discipline. Very near the end, in his last Christmas sermon, King made his usual vow to endure suffering, respond to violence with soul force, and love the oppressors. But now he said it by counterposing the dream and the nightmare, invoking the nightmares of the 4 church girls killed in Birmingham, and the miserable poverty of urban neighborhoods, American cities on fire, and the war in Vietnam. At the end, he was unfathomably exhausted and depressed, living on the edge of despair. But he dared not give up hope. He was the bearer of it. Quote, "Yes, I am personally the victim of deferred dreams, of blasted hopes. But in spite of that, I close by saying, I still have a dream, because you can't give up in life." Near the end, he fixed on 3 reforms, 1 movement ambition, and something bigger. The reforms were to terminate racial discrimination in housing, establish a minimum guaranteed income, and end America's global militarism. Sometimes he put it in ethical terms, as in his Riverside address of April 4th, 1967, with exactly 1 year of life remaining to him, calling America to repudiate its giant triplet of racism, materialism, and militarism. Meanwhile, he tried to build a multiracial poor people's movement for social justice, beginning with a March of the Poor to Washington, D.C. 50 years later, these reform objectives and the dream of a mighty movement of the poor are still highly relevant. You don't have to tweak them very much to line out an agenda for today. But King never settled for reform politics or even a movement ambition. He was an apostle of a larger dream and ambition that transcends politics and envelops our current political trauma. In the Riverside address, he called it a true revolution of values, a moral transformation of American society. He said that America's warped value system defeated every attempt to overcome the giant triplet. America needed to stop tolerating extreme inequality in the United States, stop pillaging nations in the third world, and stop presuming its right to invade and bully weaker nations. Above all, America needed to build a culture of atonement for centuries of racial violence and bigotry. This is the King we need to remember today. He could imagine a U.S.-American nation that acknowledges its crimes, compels every American to learn about them in school, and builds a generous, hospitable, multiracial social democracy. He was scathing about what was needed and what was lacking. Martin Luther King stood in a tradition of social gospel intellectuals who heard the prophetic gospel in the black church and at Morehouse College, who appropriated social gospel liberalism, who engaged the Gandhian revolution, and who called America to stop betraying its vaunted ideals. I am therefore making a continuity argument about the black social gospel that Morehouse has long championed with unsurpassed distinction. But I stress that King radicalized that tradition. For all that Daddy King influenced his son, neither Daddy King nor any of his buddies would have kept the bus strike going in Montgomery, or struck hard in Birmingham and St. Augustine, or raised hell in Chicago, or opposed the Vietnam War, or spurned President Johnson, or called an army of the poor to descend on the nation's capital. The story of the civil rights movement illuminates, like no other story, the miserable trauma we are living through today, because white supremacy, anti-blackness, and the struggle against pessimism and despair are very much our problems. All of this is despite twice electing a gifted and accomplished black president, and also because of it. Thank you, friends.
Please be seated. We'd like to thank our Founders Day speaker, Dr. Dorrien, once again for that thought-provoking, rich Founders Day speech. Our mission is sacred. Our mission is true. We've enjoyed a wonderful Founders Day convocation. We invite you now to join us for our traditional Founders Day cake cutting celebration in Shivers Hall immediately following our convocation. And please remember, we have a full weekend of Founders week activities, including our Founders Day concert that will be held at 8 p.m. tomorrow here, featuring some folks that many of us old schoolers know. So come out and enjoy that. And on Saturday, the recipients of the coveted 2018 Benny and Candle Awards will be giving their Reflections of Excellence program. It'll be hosted by WSB TV, and it will be in the Ray Charles Performing Arts Center at 11 a.m. I am encouraging strongly all Morehouse students to go and attend that event. Then the Candle in the Dark Gala Awards program to be held Saturday evening. If you have purchased tickets to attend, your tickets are ready for pickup at the Alumni Welcome Center on the lower level of the Morehouse parking deck after 1 o'clock. Closing events for Founders Week will be held Sunday, February 18th. The day begins with the Founders Day worship service at 11 a.m. here in King Chapel. And the service will be followed later by a special concert featuring the world-renowned Morehouse College Glee Club. The concert will be held at 4 p.m. at the Ray Charles Performing Arts Center. We will now stand to sing the college hymn. After the hymn, please remain standing while the platform party recesses, followed by the faculty and senior class. And your president has already told you that if you're a little late, it will not count against you.